it's been a real honor to serve on this committee this past, well, for 2 years now. And one of the exciting things is that we get so many recommendations for speakers. This year, we're in a little bit of an overtime because usually the Armchair Traveler Series is 6 speakers, and this year we have 7. So we're in overtime, but that's where games are won in overtime. And I think we have a winning combination tonight of great speakers. So we have with us the two lead archaeologists, Dr. Linda McNaughton and Tom Beamon, who in 2001 led the Chowan County Courthouse excavation project. This project was a result of the opportunity created when the historic Chowan County Courthouse underwent renovation to allow for an elevator and accessible entrance to be constructed. So let me tell you a little bit about each speaker. Dr. Linda McNaughton is a professional archaeologist, researcher, and cultural resources manager for over 40 years. She has specialized in cultural material studies, primarily in the southeastern United States. Dr. McNaughton has an undergraduate degree from Georgia State University. She attended and graduate studies at University of Tennessee, and later earned her doctorate degree and from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 1997. Her dissertation project focused on North Carolina's 19th century earthenware and stoneware pottery. She has authored numerous books and articles related to her studies on pottery, pirate culture, cemeteries, tar kilns, historic sites, and other areas of interest and regional, national, and international publications. She was for 12 years a historic site supervisor for North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources Historic Sites Section, and in 2003 became the curator and program archaeologist for Fort Bragg's Cultural Resources Program. Linda retired after 20 years as a federal archaeologist with the Department of Defense in January of 2024. She then applied for a researcher's agreement with NCDCR to resume analysis of the Chowan County Courthouse 2001 excavation project. And she just shared with me tonight, this was a volunteer project. So, I mean, it's definitely a labor of love, obviously. Thomas Beamon, Jr., taught anthropology as a full-time associate professor of anthropology at Northern Campus Wake Technical Community College since 2008, and is an adjunct instructor at William Peace University. He also runs archaeological field schools and study abroad trips for students at Wake Tech and Peace. Prior to 2008, he worked for 15 years as a field archaeologist in Virginia and North Carolina. Tom has an undergraduate degree in anthropology and history from Appalachian State University and a master's in anthropology from East Carolina University. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Linda and Tom.
So I just want to, first I want to ask a question. I want to ask you, who lived in the town, who lived here in 2001, and who was aware that archaeology was even taking place when the restoration was up? Very good, so several of you. So we didn't meet then, but perhaps you came up to see what we were doing. But most of what we were doing was under the building. So that makes this type of excavation extremely challenging, very unique, and you will see some of our methodologies here are not what you would normally see, say, at Jamestown or other open terrestrial sites. This was some creative recovery. And so sure enough, Tom and I worked on this project together. We had a few other assistants. We had some local people come and help us screen the dirt, which was screened outside the building. And then what happened after 2001, I went off to work for Club Fed, and Tom went off to teach. And so the collection sat, curated, carefully curated and cared for in the Office of State Archaeology. So as soon as I retired, I collared Tom and I said, look, I think this is such an important project. We really need to get this information out there to the public, certainly to the people of Eden in town, and also to the general public. The findings are remarkable, as we will share with you tonight. And we're a little ways from doing that because we work on Fridays only. Tom is teaching, and when you're retired, you do other things too. So we work on Fridays with a team of student volunteers who come to OSA. They've been very gracious. That's the Office of State Archaeology here in Raleigh. They've been very gracious with us, not only working on this project, but they've provided us laboratory space, which is incredible, and this team of student volunteers. So work is progressing. We are finishing with the analysis, which takes quite a while. And the next part of what we will be doing will be then compiling the technical report. So when people think of archaeology, of course, they think of the exciting part of field discovery. And that's really just less than a third of your time is spent doing field recovery. The next labor-intensive part is the laboratory processing of the materials. Because if you do not process it, if you put it in a box under the bed or in the closet, it's of no use to anyone. So processing takes a while. And then finally, Tom and I, with some assistance, we will be compiling the technical report that will be for public consumption. So you'll get to hear about it more. So bear with me, I've got some talking points. I'm going to go through some of these slides with you. We'll do it as a tag team, as we usually do. So I'll give you the field recovery part of it. Tom will then cover the highlights of some of the artifacts and the categories of artifacts. And then we have an infinite amount of questions that we still have to answer. And maybe some of you in this room can help us answer some of these questions. Okay, Lucas, so which lights are we going to keep up and take down?
Already did them.
Is this it? Okay. Well, I hope you can see these all right. They might be slightly washed out. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to try not to talk so fast because we have a few minutes here, but just want to make sure you get the highlights of what we've put together for you. Exquisitely proportioned, superbly situated, and royally regarded are common descriptors used to evoke an image of the Chowan County Courthouse, a judicious jewel of the colonial period government located in Edenton County, North Carolina. Built in 1767, the two-story brick building features a 5-bay facade with a central pavilion and a 2-story bell tower. Now, let's see if we can okay.
Other traction.
Sorry?
Other era.
Ta-da! Ta-da! Okay. The position of the building in town can clearly be seen on this 1769 Sautier map of Edenton, labeled B on the center of the map. And that's also included, I believe, on some of your handouts. We wanted to give you something to study a little later. It is centrally located at the intersection of a gridded town plan. Its dominance is apparent on top of the hill across a large open quad which served as a town common. It is visible from any approach by land and by water fronting on Queen Anne Creek, which symbolized special reverence of high places through prehistoric times, through colonial times, through modern times. These high places indicate specialized functions like mounds and temples and are often multicultural. Edenton was laid out by Edward Moseley. Michael and I've had a nice conversation about Mr. Moseley and what he's somewhat of a scoundrel, but a very brilliant man, Renaissance man, into Fingers and Many Pies, apparently. It was laid out by Edward Moseley in 1712 on 100 lots, 100 acres of land donated by the Nathaniel Chevin and divided into deep plots, each 66 feet wide by 330 feet deep. Now, that's not an accident. Does anyone know why 66 feet is significant? Anybody? Except him? Okay. That is the length of a Gunter's chain. Have you ever heard of a Gunter's chain?
Yes.
All right, well, president, Mr. Washington was a surveyor, and he was using a Gunter chain as a unit of measure. It's exactly 66 feet long. You use it with a circumferencer, which is on a tripod, and that's how land navigation was achieved. So 66 is one Gunter chain wide by 3 Gunter chains deep. So it's not just random numbers. It had meaning. Each numbered lot was sold by the county commissioners for 20 shillings, with the stipulation that the owner must build a structure on that lot within a year of purchase, or the sale was revoked. And this did happen frequently. Lots 17 and 18 were set aside for government structures, and where the 1767 courthouse now stands, also with the county jail in the rear yard. Lot 5, across, sort of south of this, you can see it here. This map was compiled by Elizabeth Van Moore, but this also, lot 5 was a double lot, and this was designated for a courthouse, which there was one briefly here. If any of you are familiar with the waterfront property, this was the drain lots right here originally. Drain is in the family name. Okay, so lot 5 was an open town common quad. Lot 16, which I've highlighted within the red box, is important, and its close proximity to lots 17 and 18 is important. Numerous historical maps of Edenton were consulted during our research, as we were including all of the Sanborn fire insurance maps. And I don't expect you to read all of this. They're online, they're easy to read, but we were checking out all of these. Why? Because we could, and why? Because we also ended up trenching through the rear yard. So if you just look at the dates, these are the sequence of Sanborn maps. And have any of you done research with the Sanborn maps? Okay, yes, of course. So they're interesting because they will tell you what the building is constructed of, whether it's wood or brick or masonry. It was created because it's a fire insurance map. They wanted to know the sidings of the buildings, and it also has locations of some underground cisterns, which of course is for fire protection. So there's a lot that you can look at when you're doing overlays of these maps, which we do in AutoCAD for the most part. But changes in the jailer's yard, changes in the buildings there is important. Not so much changes on the 1767 courthouse, except things that were sort of added and then subtracted, but the core of the building pretty much stayed the same. This 42-year period provided important information about the appearance and disappearance of rear yard buildings in use, primarily the 1825 county jail, the jailer's house, an 1838 kitchen, and the fire equipment sheds. After 1904, changes to the courthouse were mostly on the interior of the building, so they're not going to necessarily show here, including the renovations of the east and west wing. In 2001, before renovations began on the courthouse interior, we reviewed small-scale archaeological clearance work that had taken place by other state archaeologists in 1990, 1991, and 94, but they were on the exterior only, and they had to do with front steps or side steps or the installation of some utilities outside the building. So they weren't as helpful as what we needed on the inside, but we were covering all the bases, which is what research is about. For the interior restoration, detailed architectural drawings were done to document existing 18th century features. This exploded view of the two-story building shows the relationship of rooms and wings. Restoration was targeted for the east and west wings primarily, and the centrally located courtroom with its raised magistrate's platform, chair, and bench. I do, but I'm so close, I can just come over here. So we were working under what would be the east wing down here. Stop it. Right here is what I call the raised magistrate's platform. This area features probably, and then under the west wing. And so those are the areas that we were asked to come in and provide archaeological clearance for before before they could install these modern appliances to make it life easier for people in the courthouse. So elevators, HVAC systems. This is a National Historic Landmark site. This work is required to perform clearance so that the workers could get in there and do the work. Okay. Photo documentation of the interior architectural features was done by various preservation technicians to capture the existing elements, such as there's some before and after here. So the magistrate's chair, the railing, the lighting, the paneling, the floor covering, many of which were of colonial period in age. For this reason, restoration plans called for archaeological clearance to be done under the existing structure. Here we go. We had to be creative here. Before gaining access to the crawl space under the building, installation of utility lines was also called for through the jailer's yard. Another reason we were looking at the sandboard maps. What was out there, what was the older buildings, what do we expect to encounter? And we were monitoring this. It was like 240 feet of utility lines that we were on the ground monitoring, Tom and I jumping down in the hole, mapping profiles, collecting artifacts, not necessarily stopping them, but getting them to pause long enough for us to do some recordation when we needed it. So we began in the north yard, moving south towards the rear of the courthouse. Trenching was monitored by Tom and I, and sometimes the foreman of the job would come over and see what we were doing. This was an effort to map subsurface features.
Can you read now?
Well, yeah, I think so. Just let me sort of get here. Okay, features and document elevations. A 2-foot deep modern layer was exposed near the detached kitchen. Closer to the colonial courthouse, the trench crossed an 18th century alleyway with 12 layers of fill and upper asphalt layer, plus a layer of plaster. Most artifacts from the trenching dated to the 19th century, and their location mapped in linear feet as the trench progressed and came up to the back of the hotel, actually to the side. This took 2-3 days of our monitoring to complete. Finally, the archaeologists were allowed to begin under the building, where we focused on 3 critical areas of excavations that needed to be cleared for the renovations to be installed. The first was here under the podium, which was accessed by a small crawl space door here. So we had to clear this much of this area. We did not clear up here, that's still intact, but mostly just where that needed to be installed. We also cleared under the west wing for utilities to be installed here, and under the east wing where the elevator was to be included. Okay, those are our 3 target areas, so we'll be talking in detail about that. Work began under the magistrate's platform first.
Oh, wow.
This is fun. This is fun. This is like, sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night about this. Are we crazy or what? Okay. Under the platform was accessed by a 2-foot wide doorway into the crawl space under what was a newly built handicap ramp. Another challenge. Safety lights were installed for visibility, which was very limited. On the ground surface, we found desiccated cat and bird skeletons, right? Strewn brickbats, and wood shavings, which were actually planing curls from the installation of the 1767 floor joist over our head. So that's the level of preservation under here. It was so incredibly dry. That was amazing to see that in the screen, to pick up these planing curls that were just littered on the floor. At first, excavation was done by hand, and the dirt conveyed by bucket loads to the access door, then outside to the screens that was outside. There was no way to screen this inside. We would have choked, basically. So the dirt had to be hauled outside by bucket load. And this was fun. This was where our local neighbor, Madison Phillips, if any of you know him, our instrumental engineer at the time, a gurney system was installed for quicker delivery. The excavated dirt from the 10 by 24 excavation here exposed 3 distinct layers of deposits. Level 1 consisted of powdery soils with delicate artifacts like bones, wood chips, as I mentioned, pipe stems, colonial period pipe stems, ceramics, and wine bottle glass. Level 2 was compact and clay soil with artifacts dating from the 1720s to the 1760s period of occupation. And finally, level 3 was a dense layer which contained a middle to late Native American woodland period deposit, documented by pottery, oyster shell, deer bone, and a few lithops. Again, prominent hilltop, once a good location, always a good location, right? That's what they tell you in real estate. To speed up the soil removal, new techniques were employed, provided by the contractor. We came to call it the suck truck, which was used, just very quickly, this is just another shot of another archaeologist who came to help us outside. And you can see Tom and I are both under here pointing to the reporter, what exactly we're seeing, and they climbed under there with us. To remove the loose soils, we used what we came to call the suck truck. Now, this was an innovative removal technique, but it worked. And in fact, the more I thought about it, it was very logical. Have any of you done underwater excavation? Well, when you're doing underwater excavation, they have a pump and a siphon hose, and basically they still use a grid, but they suck the sand off through this pump, and the sand goes up onto the recovery vessel, and it's screened above the recovery vessel. Very similar here. These powdery level 1 soils were being then sucked outside by layer and run through a screen. So this worked, and it helped to speed up this process a little bit as well. And it proved successful and very efficient. Even delicate bones and wood chips safely reached the outside screens and the baggers. 2 other staffers who arrived to help us came to help do the screening, which I've shown that just now. Okay. As work progressed under the podium, 2 large post hole features were mapped and excavated. These were equidistant out from the south wall of the brick foundation of the 1767 building. Equidistant out, you'll see that on your map, we'll come back to it. We noted a change in brick in this wall as well, which some recycling of brick above 3 courses that were different. We could see there were 2 layers of brick laying on that particular wall on the south side. This proved very important as we made further discoveries. The 2 post holes were excavated to reveal 1 foot large diameter posts. So the mold is just the stain from it. The posts are all gone. They were charred, but you get these stains in the ground, and they tell you that there was a large post in that position at one time. And these contained, the fill around these post holes contained 18th century artifacts. So what you're seeing here, Tom and I have just finished excavating one of those. You see the crawl space entry. That's the other archaeologist from the state who's peering in. So you can see the level of what we excavated and how we were conveying materials and ourselves in and out of this situation. With only 4 days remaining in the schedule, we moved quickly to expose the west wing and conduct clearance work in that area. Access again was beneath the wooden subfloor through a crawl space door. Here, another test unit was excavated for installation of mechanical movements. This time, a conveyor belt was set up at the crawl space door to move the artifacts, again, by control, by stratigraphic control, by level, outside to the waiting screeners who weren't set up here yet, but that's how we got this material out. Stratigraphic levels, similar to what we saw under the platform, under the podium, were maintained until workers encountered what appeared to be a very large midden. Do you know what a midden is?
No.
Okay. It's a trash pit. Basically, it's accumulated debris. There are middens all over the town of Edenton. Some bigger than others, some older than others, but they're everywhere. This deeply stratified trash pit contained thousands of artifacts and organic material, dating again from the 1720s to the 1750s era, such as pipe stems, wig curlers, German stonewares, Delft white salt glazed stoneware, wine bottles, stemware, personal items, and lead glazed redwares, along with vast amounts, I underline vast amounts of animal bone, such as pig, sheep, cow, turkey, deer, rabbit, turtle, fish, and possible elk. Basically food scraps. These are food scraps. The midden was approximately 7 feet by 9 feet and tapered out to the east. Recovery continued at this large feature, and profile maps were then created. Maybe you can see some of these layers in the profile here. And that is a brick pier holding the floor joists, actually built up and holding the floor joists over our head. With time running out, we had to move then to the east wing and begin clearance there for what would be the elevator. In the east wing, more surprises awaited us. Being able to stand up certainly helped us to move quicker. Here we discovered 2 more of those large post holes, actually 10 feet apart again and equidistant out from lining up. Excavated, each revealed a 1-foot diameter charred post hole. These appear identical to the 2 that we found under the podium to the north. At present, we think these are scaffolding holes that were used to build a structure, which we were trying to confirm why were these post holes under this existing 1767 building and in alignment with something else. The stratigraphic levels in this area were also similar to those under the podium and contained 18th century artifacts, along with some 19th century materials, which we'll point out. Those were things like beer bottles and inkwells that had evidently been pitched under there during the 19th century. As contractors came behind us to expand this hole for the elevator, they encountered a section of an intact brick foundation about 20 feet long, north-south, by 2.5 feet wide, east-west. We hastened back to map this feature. It was composed of 2 courses of brick laid in 7 courses of brick laid in English bond pattern, which is significant, and a 1746 British royal halfpenny was also found while cleaning the wall. So I'm showing you this to show you, here's the base of that brick wall. Behind it over here is the 1767 wall. This wall is not built on, it is a remnant. Both corners of the brick wall, brick foundation wall had been truncated by the construction of the 1767 courthouse. After consultation with the local historians and architectural historian, mostly Carl Lounsbury, who was here at the time and consulting, the head consultant on the restoration, we were trying to figure out what exactly this foundation represented. We concluded that what we were actually looking at was a remnant foundation of the earlier 1722 council chamber, which we know from historical records existed on this lot. Records indicate it was a 25 by 16 foot structure and therefore representing the oldest government building in North Carolina. And you can see we got mortar samples, brick samples, and we're measuring it there. While no builder's trench was found on the exterior, we were able to excavate and expose the disturbed ends of each of the walls. And here, this is a shot looking down, so You see that they're replacing the joists with steel girders here, and that's what's happening above our heads while we're down working in that level there. Okay. With this discovery, we return to the area under the podium to compare the exposed south wall. Okay, sorry, one behind. This is the corner that was truncated by the 1767 wall, which is this thing. So the building of that, you can see clearly cut into what would have been the south wall of this building, and it goes up like that. Okay. So let's see. This discovery we returned to under the podium to compare the exposed foundation, and noted in that area behind me here that that brick wall is again part of the 1722 wall that had more brick added to the top of it. So we've got two walls of this building, two walls of the 1722 council chamber under the 1767 courthouse. This northern wall was disturbed at the western end, making it about 16 feet in length. To quickly sum up the 2001 archaeological excavations under the courthouse, this plan right now, at this time, this is what we have to offer you. They'll give more and better later. This is plan view provides locations of these deposits and features, which I've just mentioned. The post holes related to the council chamber construction period and trash pit located under the west wing would have been in what was lot 16. So I've included that map on your handout too. And related to a separate building, most likely a tavern. After our 3 weeks of fieldwork concluded, the artifacts came home to OSA, and Tom and I moved on to other employment. So you can, this information is in your handout. You can study it more carefully. And I'm going to turn this over to Tom now, so he can talk about the artifacts. But do you have any questions on this, what you're seeing here at this time? I put the 1767 courthouse footprint there. I've shown you what we were exposed to here. We did a bigger test unit here. Stop it. Post holes, equidistance out from each of these remnant walls. These two walls could easily still be under there, but they were not available for us to go that way, and not likely to ever happen. It's got York sandstone laid all over it now. Over here, the mitten that we exposed and we drew, and there'll be more detailed maps of this, actually extends under this building to that direction. It's not a perfect square like this by any means, but we've got most of it now. So what I'm trying to convey is that while this building is existing, whatever's generating this tavern mitten is existing on lot 16 right beside it. And that's one of our big research questions. Okay, sir, so Tom is gonna fast forward us. Here we go. You wanna do there, you wanna come
I
here?
prefer over here, actually.
Here you go. Here you go.
As Linda said at the beginning of the presentation, the field work is just the first part of the story. When we do budgeting for larger projects in archaeology, we usually say every one person day in the field is about 7 to 10 days in the lab. Because we have to wash, catalog, write our reports. So we're still working on this, actually. Just to give you a little overview, this project yielded over 14,000 artifacts, that's an older number, but close to about 7,000 fallen materials or animal bones, a lot of ceramics and other things. So this is going to be a little bit of a summary of all of the different areas Linda talked about.
It's the down.
Okay. This is the lab on Fridays, as you would find us.
Wow.
Can you move
Of
over?
course, I apologize.
That's okay, that's right.
This is the lab on Fridays, as you would find us. Some students, a lot of trays laid out with material. They're actually numbering all the artifacts so that we can then start to cross-mend different ceramics and get counts of things like wine bottles and wine stems, things such as this. So, like I said, a normal Friday in Raleigh at the lab. These are some of the animal bones. These are some of the larger animal bones, but you can see a few small ones tapered into there. Our current goal is to start on the animal bone analysis. We've gotten through all the rest of the material, so we're down to the bones. There's actually 12 boxes, cube boxes of animal bones. So there's a shortage of things. Now, in terms of prehistoric material, these are some of the normal prehistoric materials you would find in this area. We have some from the intercoastal plain, which would have been the Tuscarora, and we have some from the coast, which would have been the Algonquian populations. Edenton seems to be, and the Chiltern River seems to be kind of the middle ground between them. So to have them all on the same side is pretty exciting. We can see some punctured as maybe for a pendant or a mending hole. But our good friend Steve Davis, who certainly is more a prehistorian than I am, kindly analyzed our 160 fragments of prehistoric material. Now, oh yeah, well actually a little bit of everything. These are some nice shoe buckles. I found the pointer. Shoe buckles, straight pins, different buttons from different time periods. Anybody know what this little small button is? It's called a crosser button. It was an underwear button. But then a nice brass for larger materials. What we believe are sleeve links, which would be cuff links of the period.
What's that little one in between?
The little one right there,
No,
right there.
and the next one. Yeah, that.
Okay. We're coming to see.
Wait just a minute, we have to confirm. Okay, we got it. We made a
Everything is an
confirmed on our
inset
story.
for
It's an
a
inset,
button or
a glass
a
inset
sleeve link.
for like a sleeve link, a fancy sleeve link.
Shoes.
Oh, yeah.
We also found shoes, which is not something you normally find in most archaeological sites. We had adult men, women, and child sizes, which maybe indicates maybe related to the jail somehow, or maybe related to the tavern. Not sure. Still working on these.
And the aglet.
Yeah.
The aglet.
And the aglet, the bottom right, that'd be like a shoelace tip that you would use to.
Like when they had the shoe button shoes? Is that what they used?
Shoe button shoes. No.
Well, it could be also from armorial, so it's
Close.
very large. It's very large and it's very decorative. I think we'll be able to keep this out a little better. It's rolled brass. But if you imagine military officers with a swag, and you have an epaulette here, and you have
That's right.
rope hanging down,
okay.
so it's a large size aglet. But you still have them on your lace shoes. They're still common today, but not that fancy, not that big. It's colonial.
Wig curlers and mice combs. Certainly, we don't think of the British magistrates. I heard somebody say they watched British mysteries on TV. You can always still see the powdered wigs.
Yeah.
My favorite artifact, which we chose not to show with this, is in addition to these colonial wig curlers, we had a plastic pink wig curler from modern times.
From the jail trenching.
So,
From the
yeah,
yard
exactly.
trenching,
Not under.
not from under the building.
So again, these are roughly 1750s to 1779. Pipe stems. Pipe stems, we had over 442 individual stems of pipes.
Wow.
And if you know a little bit about these pipes, they come very long in the stem, and there's the bowl. And as you're smoking it, your saliva gets mixed with some of the chip tobacco, and it'll clog, so you have to break that part off and
Oh,
So, we had a Prince of Wales motif on one of the bowls, which is always nice. But they're very common at tavern deposits, and they're actually pretty common in the colonial period. Pipes are often considered to be the first really truly disposable artifact that you buy to use and discard. Now, using pipes, one of the other things we do is there are different regression formulas for pipes that tell you sort of the time period. So, using the pipes under the podium, we have roughly 1760 and 1755. The trash pit, 1754. East wing, 1741, and the jailer's yard, 1751. So, pipe stems are very handy. The more we have, the more accurate a date we believe we can have. So. Any questions so far? Okay. Personal gear, hygiene items. Sorry, I went backwards. Okay, wine bottles. We had a lot of wine bottles.
wine.
Well, that's one theory, certainly, but we counted the necks of the wine bottles to try to get a minimum number of wine bottles, and we ended up with about 15. Although you have to realize for one neck, you could have dozens of pieces of the body when it broke. So we're still working on our counts for things like this, but a lot of different specific types of wine. We have British, Dutch, and French styles.
What's the oldest shape there?
The oldest shape here,
1640.
these are what we call onion bottles because they look kind of like onions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into what's called the mallet forms, like a mallet. So the onion forms are definitely the earliest.
Okay.
And there are books and chapters and more books on specific dates for different bottles and bottle shapes. So we're doing the best we can with what we have, especially the small fragments.
The ones in the bottom left corner are called case gems, and those are typically either British or Dutch, and they're square bottles, so they actually came in wood crates, you know, with so that was a different style, but they're predominantly containing gems, so they're called case gems.
We didn't have too many of those, I believe.
Here's a
Yes, ma'am.
I have a weird question. Would those like cut your hands while you're extracting them, or are they soft like sea glass?
But you're very careful. They're not to the point if you handle them roughly, they wouldn't really cut your hand, but it could. So when we're washing them, when we're processing them, we try to handle them by the larger area, away from the brains. Yes?
I'm just wondering, wouldn't they have recycled bottles? I mean, it was not really, things weren't that available. Like, would they have only thrown things away if they were already broken?
Yes. I will tell you that most wine bottles at sites that have been thoroughly researched of taverns, they're getting their wine in casks and cases and refilling the bottles. So the bottles would be recycled heavily. Yes, ma'am.
On the left, is that glass at the top? It's shiny. It looks like ceramic or something.
When it's shiny, it means the glass is sick. It's starting to break now.
Oh, okay.
So,
Hmm.
any other questions? Yes.
These are all blown glass, is that how they?
Yes.
At this time period, yes.
What was the earliest wine bottle that you found?
Probably in this group, these onion bottles like this, 1704, 1710, several like this. And what Tom is saying is that glass rust, like metal rust, glass starts decomposing, so it starts exfoliating. And if we were working with a conservator, we would probably try to stabilize these, but nothing is whole. So this is the most whole that we have. But I just put this up here as a guide, so most of what we're finding is these last three styles.
Other questions? Stemware. Again, with wine bottles, you would expect maybe some stemware. These are mainly from the tavern trash pit deposit. 1765 to 17 teens. We also have some tumblers, like glasses. It would be 18th, 19th century as well. Now tankards. This is the German stoneware styles of tankards or steins. They're very dateable. There's been a lot of publication on German stonewares. These are from 1740 to 1770. But this is the kind of beer mug I would say you would find in a tavern. And again, some other salt glazed chamber pots. You know, if you're enjoying your meat and your alcohol, you would need a chamber pot periodically. So this is the pre-outdoor bathroom, pre-outdoor bathroom building. So these chamber pots, we actually have quite a few in different styles. These would have been from the 1720s to 1770s. Serving plates, a lot of what we call white salt glazed stoneware is a main serving plate we're seeing in the tavern. We have plates and we have platter forms, but all of them are 1720s to 1740s, which is a good time period that we're looking at.
Salt glazed,
Yes.
I don't know anything about that, what does that mean?
So, salt glazing in a case like this is very refined type of earthenware, and in the kiln, when you fire it, you throw salt in there, and it creates this orange peel texture. Now, you can see that in many modern U.S. Kilns, a lot of historic U.S. kilns. But these are British, which usually means the degree of salt added is very high quality. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I was just saying, the reason we're showing you the date ranges for these is because when you're doing historical archaeology, certain types of ceramics because temporal markers. So when you find these temporal markers, you know you're working within that range. Like I don't show you any pictures of this very coarse lead glazed earthenware that's from Buckley, Wales. And we sometimes call it Yuckley-ware instead of
It's not very
Buckley-ware.
pretty.
But when you find that on an archaeological site, you know that site predates 1770 because it stopped being imported. So as historical archaeologists, we're trained to these date ranges of particular ceramics as indicators.
Are they all broken because they were in the trash pit, or are they all broken because it's just been so long that they all eventually broke?
There are several answers to that question. Let me give you both of them. There's some theory that the items most used are the ones that most often get broken.
Yeah.
So the ones in the trash pit would have been probably used the most and were broken. They're not throwing whole plates and platters away. Did that answer your question?
Okay, yes.
Were these all found under the courthouse, these pieces?
Mainly in the trash pit, but we had some under the courthouse as well. Oops, wrong way. And of course, these are some cups, pitchers, bowls. All of this dates to slightly a little later, the 1685 to 1785. 1762 is a very pivotal year because industrialized British ceramics come on the scene. Creamware is one of the earliest. So we had a little bit of creamware, but we also had some earlier.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would they have lead in these?
No, not white salt glazed stoneware. Lead only occurs in lead glazed earthenware. So when you get to pearlwares and creamwares, yes, those have lead glazed in them. And certainly when you get to lead glazed earthenwares, which we've got a few of coming up, those eventually, you know, lead is toxic. But these are totally safe. I think the other thing to focus on, they're hollowware forms. These are, you know, these people are, this assemblage is reflecting pretty much smoking, eating, drinking, and going to the bathroom with some degree of clothing loss, you know, probably from some fights, you know, and lots of dinners.
So as delicate as we can put
As
it.
delicate as we can do.
These are subways again.
Yeah.
Very, very nice little drinking cup, tea-bowl form. This is referred to as Delft, which is British made during this period, or at least this piece was. Very, very nice, very good condition.
So high quality ceramics,
Extraordinarily.
socioeconomic things are being looked at here too. These are high quality ceramics.
Delft actually is made in Holland as well as Britain for 17th, 18th centuries, pretty consistently. In fact, they have some in Jamestown, things like that. But this style, this cup form and the decoration, we were able to date a little tighter, 1725 to 1740. Here's your lead glaze. Again, large drinking cans or tankards. These are the lead glaze that you were talking about earlier. This is put on like a red body or a buff color body.
Can I just add, Tom,
Please.
that it's important, again, that we're finding this material. So this material reflects intercoastal trade, not intercontinental trade. So Edenton particularly, and we know this from other archaeological sites in Edenton, the Wessington House lot, Ardale House, other places, that they're receiving goods on intercoastal train. A lot of sea captains were just zipping it up and down from Pennsylvania down to here. So these are Pennsylvania products, and that's important to document.
More British slipwares. These are from the Midlands or Staffordshire area. These are pretty nice to find. They're definitely usually large platter forms, occasionally a smaller bowl, but you should be starting to see the sort of mix of goods and where they're coming from. There's some from Britain, some from North America, in different ways. So walking into like a restaurant today and seeing all the same style of plate and cup would not have been the case there. So these Staffordshire plates are roughly 1670 to 1785. Any questions on these?
It's a cobbled rim.
It's like a pie rim.
These are not wheel turned, these are press molded plates. These are press molded, and then the cobble rim looks like a pie crust. Yeah. It's from Staffordshire, the Midlands region of the.
And then the bottom picture is a Philadelphia slipware. Again, intracoastal trade, not intercontinental. And of course, toys and activities, marbles, small tea sets, maybe for a dollhouse. That's about all we can say about these. And this was a unique item. This is a branding iron with the name Hoskins on it, for possibly marking cattle or marking animals.
Or barrels.
Or barrels. But that was fairly unexpected. We know that there are several Hoskins who are part of the jail complex. So we're researching this a little more.
Are the S's backwards?
It is, because when you put it on, it'll be right side.
But we think it's Edmund Hoskins. That's sort of deductive because he was definitely in the hood and in the building because he was the sheriff and he was the clerk and he was the treasurer. So he had a reason to be on that lot and in that space. So he has another brother who was a coroner who could have been there.
All the family. And of course, for the courthouse, where ink is a premium, we have some ink wells. Very different styles. The umbrella style, the igloo style, and the faceted style all were present in these excavations. Again, more in the yard of the trenching, I believe, is where we found those.
Right. It says East Wing Trenching.
Use it, throw it out.
And is that glass starting to break down? It looks like it.
Not as bad as some of the wine bottles, but it's definitely, it's not bad yet.
So is that a disposable item? They come filled, and when they use the ink up, they just toss back in another?
I would assume, and again, there's several different possibilities. You could have ink in a larger container and just refill these, or they might come filled with ink, and when they're done, you dispose of them.
And writing desks of the period sometimes, had pre-drilled holes like school desks.
Yeah.
So you could socket the little ink well down into that little socket, and you just keep refilling that until it breaks. And we did find the tops of a couple of actually pour bottles with pour spouts on them. But this is what you would expect in a courthouse where things are being.
And of course, architectural, nails, spikes, a key escutcheon in the bottom right. All of these from the time period of the courthouse.
And just as a note, we did save brick samples and we saved mortar samples. So we are planning to do some analysis of the different mortars, especially on the 1722 foundation. And we do have one really nice keystone piece of the imported York sandstone that somehow was discarded and left under the building. But it's a keystone, so it would have been from an archway of the building or something. That's the biggest artifact.
And we'll take it from here.
Well, this is about winding it up.
Are there any artifact questions first of all? Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned the German stoneware, is that the style or actually have been imported from Germany?
Imported from Germany.
Gotcha.
And the style. It's that very typical looking gray, a rich gray, very homogeneous clays from Germany with either cobalt or manganese accenting, sometimes incising, sometimes cartouching. Right, that's very common, and it's carried from the German steins to the chamber pots, as you saw, and other drinking containers.
One question I did have, how many of you saw some of these artifacts when they were on display in the courthouse?
Okay.
A couple of you, okay. We are working, when we are done with it, they'll create another exhibit on the courthouse also. So you can see them in person.
Yeah.
Right, there'll be a lot more to say, as you know. So, the last one is just our thank you slide, but I just wanted to point out, Mr. Marshall kindly shared a research booklet that he co-compiled with some other authors, local authors, to talk about Oglesby's Tavern. And we feel like from the research we know now, and this is what that Mitten deposit, because of the reflection of the artifacts, that's what we look at. What behaviors do these artifacts tell us? Predominantly in the Mitten area, it's drinking, smoking, eating, some clothing, debris, but not a lot of what you would consider domestic artifacts, like you would find at a house site. You don't find those. We're not finding those kinds of artifacts there. So we are very curious to know when the tavern that was located here, and we have some information about Edward Mosley buying it. Secondarily, he did put a building on it. He then sells it to Slaughter. And that information is coming from Mr. Marshall's research. We're still curious. In our mind, one of our big questions is, you've got a tavern located here next to what was a smaller council chamber right here, a 16 by 25. And it, okay, bye-bye. Oh, now I really can't see anything.
We should mention that a tavern beside a domestic court facility is not unusual because people will be coming into town
Yes.
to do business, to do a place to stay.
Right. And the whole thing is that they're coming here because they're needing food and drink to conduct their court business. So even after the 1767, thank you, whoever rescued me. So after they're coming here in 1767, that's still, there's several taverns in town, and they're also like a guest house. You get food and drink and you get lodging. It may not be elegant, but you get lodging. So we're very curious to know when this privately owned lot, number 16, then is sort of subsumed under county or town ownership, and therefore they expand the big statement of the 1767 courthouse to then include that lot. And we left out a whole lot of other history that I'm sure Mr. Marshall can share with us too, about the wooden courthouse that was right here briefly and then it went away. Descriptions, historical descriptions of how derelict and airy they were. They weren't tight buildings. But we have a lot more research to do on interpreting the use of these lots and what happened underneath them. So
This is absolutely fascinating. We're running out of time.
we're out of time.
Yeah, if you have any other comments. If you want to-
I was just gonna ask you if, that type of a, structure was also called a roadhouse?
What house?
A roadhouse?
It could have been called a traveler's rest. It could have been called an ordinary. Regionally, if you go up and down in the United States, you'll see them called, we had some on Fort Bragg that we called them, yes, like a roadhouse is a common one. But taverns, ordinaries, there's an inn even, some degrees of formality and some degrees of informality.
Cause did they have rooms where you could sleep? or not?
Yes, upstairs typically.
Yeah, okay.
All the activity went on downstairs, but it would let you a room or a mattress on the floor, for
Yeah.
a shilling or something.
While
Well-
we're running out of time, we'll be happy to stay and answer any questions you have after the break.
Okay, lights, please. Thank you. All right, well, thank you all for listening. This is our thank you to all of our volunteers.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And please accept this honorarium.
Oh, goodness, thank you very much.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your membership as friends, as because of donors and members like you that were able to bring these great programs to Edenton. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.